Hello, everyone. My name is Meni Morim, and I'm really delighted to virtually be with you here today and speak a little bit about our company, Namaste Technologies, and in particular, in relation to one of our most recent announcements, how VendorLink, our marketplace technology, could expand Namaste's footprint throughout the US and beyond. So before we begin today, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to remind all participants that portions of today's discussion may, by their nature, necessarily involve risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results to differ materially from those contemplated by the forward-looking statements. So I do encourage everyone to refer to our risk factors that are posted on cedar.com. So now that we have that out of the way, I'll talk a little bit about the company, how we different, a little bit about our positioning, a little bit about our strategic initiatives and short and long-term plans. So hopefully by the end of the presentation, you'll have a better idea of what we are, what we're doing, and where we're going. So I'll start with the high-level vision. What did we set to become? Namaste is essentially set a vision to become a platform that connects consumers with products that they're looking for. And I always find that comparisons are valuable in these cases. So compare us, for example, to Airbnb that doesn't really own any real estate. They have a platform that connects hosts with travelers. Or if you want to take an even more traditional example, take a bank. They take deposits on one end and they issue loans on the other end. But both of these companies and many others provide services in the center of their platform for which they charge. And this is how these platforms effectively remain above the transaction, protecting themselves from any margin erosions or any changes in the industries that they serve and generate profits. And Namaste has been executing on that strategy and progressing towards that vision. And one of the most notable recent achievements that I'll elaborate a little bit more about later today is releasing VendorLink, our marketplace technology that effectively allows us to onboard third-party sellers just like the Amazon marketplace does. So let's talk a little bit about why us, right? There are so many companies operating within the cannabis industry and beyond, and why are we different? How are we different? So I'll start with the first key differentiator that for me is very important, which is even though we hold an LP, a licensed producer license, we don't actually grow any cannabis. And that was by design. We predicted that at some point there's going to be a shift from how big is your production capacity to actual fundamentals. And there will be a lot of price wars and eventually a race to the bottom. And we knew that cannabis will be commoditized, and we wanted to take part in the value chain where we enable players to grow their business rather than be bogged down by growing. So that's the first key differentiator that we have. The second one, and this is what I'll elaborate further, is that we are not your traditional cannabis company. In fact, we're not even your traditional technology company. We're really a hybrid of both and much more than that. What we do is we leverage technology along with proven CPG processes currently within the cannabis industry. And we believe that there are 4 key pillars to succeeding in this industry, which are distribution, technology, as I mentioned, community, and product. And I'll elaborate on each one of these as we go through the presentation. So let's start with distribution. And there's a reason why we couple distribution specifically with technology. Everything we do within the company is really powered by technology. We're a very data-driven company. But when it comes to distribution, it's particularly important because it accelerates and enables us to move much faster. So let's start with mapping our existing distribution channels. The first one is our medical B2C, a business-to-consumer channel, where we leverage our telemedicine platform, Namaste MD, and our online platform, canmar.com, to effectively deliver coast-to-coast medical cannabis in Canada. The second channel is our B2B channel, which we launched about a year ago, and it's growing rapidly and effectively allows us to put cannabis in customers' hands via the provincial bodies and independent retailers. And lastly, we recently launched our B2C recreational channel, where we facilitate recreational cannabis transactions, starting with the province of Saskatchewan, using VendorLink, our marketplace platform, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. And we're most excited about one of our most recent announcements, that we're exploring our entry into the US via canmar.com. So subject to TSXV approval, we will be leveraging our marketplace technology, VendorLink, to facilitate sales in the US. And I'll talk more about the US notion a little bit in more detail and beyond that as well. But effectively, what you can see here based on what I've described is that our expansion potential is much larger and more efficient than any other LP, because we don't need a grow facility or expensive physical locations in order to expand. We have technology and a unique positioning that we literally spent years building and testing, and now is the time to deploy it, and we started deploying that, and we're very, very excited for what's to come. So I mentioned VendorLink, and what is that exactly? So again, using examples and comparisons, I noted earlier, think about Amazon, Airbnb, Uber. Uber doesn't own any cars. Airbnb doesn't own any real estate. And while Amazon does sell their own products, right, Amazon Basics, predominantly all these companies are marketplaces. And what these marketplaces do is enable retailers to have a much, much broader exposure to a much larger market. They also handle everything that retailers need from an e-commerce perspective, such as customer acquisition, CRO, meaning conversion rate optimization, payment processing. And if you remember those services that I mentioned a few slides ago, Airbnb offers photography services to their hosts. Amazon offers the known Fulfilled by Amazon. So effectively, as a retailer, you don't even need to have a warehouse in order to be selling online. So that represents a massive value proposition to both retailers and customers. And on the retailer side, they can really focus on what they do best, build their brand, innovate on the products that they want to sell, and leave the heavy lifting to the platform. On the consumer side, it's very simple. They have one location where they can get everything they need. And that is a massive advantage on that double-sided marketplace. But marketplaces are very hard to build, specifically double-sided marketplace, where you have a dynamic between buyers and sellers. So imagine, as an example, you want to start a competitor to Airbnb. So you have to start somewhere. You have to start either with the hosts or the guests. So let's say you start with the host and you say, hey, we'll give you a 50% discount over the fees you pay Airbnb. Everybody will be like, this is great. They sign up, they list their homes, but there are no guests on the platform. So very quickly, they move back to Airbnb. So then you turn around and you say, okay, let's start with the guests. Let's do the same thing. Offer them a discount, say the prices will be competitive. Everybody gets excited, they sign up, but there's no supply. There are no homes, no locations that they can choose to go to because no one's there. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation. It's a supply and demand situation. Now, we have been generating traffic, essentially, if you compare it, guests, as an independent standalone e-commerce site. So we have the traffic. Now we're adding the retailers, effectively the hosts, to our platform. And we're starting to fill that double-sided marketplace. And what's most interesting about marketplaces is that network effects are a key growth lever when it comes to building double-sided marketplaces. Because once a marketplace hits a tipping point, growth starts being exponential. And leaving becomes very, very hard, right? Think about Facebook as the best example for a network effect. How hard is it to leave? You've built your networks, everybody's there. It becomes exceptionally difficult. So there is a level of dependency between both retailers, consumers, and the platform. And this is exactly why the third pillar is important, community. Remember, we said we have 4 pillars to success. The first one is distribution, second one is technology, and now we're going to talk a little bit about community. There are so many options out there for you to choose where you buy your products from. So why would any customer choose us? There are various reasons, right? Pricing, availability, etc. But particularly in cannabis and other similar categories, to most people, it's something new that up until recently was illegal. So there's a lot of taboo and concern around these products. So you need to generate trust. You need to generate a sense of security. So people trust reviews by other real people, which is something we refer to as UGC, user-generated content. They would trust professional content that was written by experts. Other elements such as this eventually gain trust, give a sense of security, and eventually create loyalty to the platform upon which you buy. Because once you have a great experience and you buy on one platform, there's really very little reason for you to go anywhere else as long as the price is right, there is inventory and selection. So we have an advantage here where we can use our different channels, such as Namaste MD, our telemedicine platform, Canmar.com, that are both very deeply integrated to build everything that I mentioned above, this community, and eventually grow our marketplace. The last pillar to discuss is the product itself, because truthfully, none of the other pillars matter if you don't have something that customers actually want to buy. So how do we achieve that, and what do we build here, and how does our marketplace platform fit into that? So Namaste started in Canada and in other geographies as well, selling accessories. We then added THC and CBD products in flower form. We then added 2.0 products. We effectively built a platform, a foundation, an expertise to facilitate all these things. And now, and this is the reason we're so excited, we're ready to take it beyond Canada. And our recent announcement that I briefly mentioned, that we're exploring our entry into the US via Canmar.com, is something that we're very, very excited about. Again, we are subject to TSXV approvals, and if we receive those, we will be leveraging our vendor link technology with partners that joined our marketplace. We're going to start in collaboration with Dankstop, one of the fastest growing online smoking supply retailers, and with Peak Birch Logic with respect to hemp-derived CBD sales. So effectively, the way that this is going to work, through an affiliate, we intend to use this expansion as a beachhead into the US, increasing our total addressable market really significantly. I think it was just last week that the CEO of Afria, Erwin Simon, one of the larger LPs here in Canada, said that he believes that the recent US election strengthens the near-term potential for change of the federal cannabis regulation. And I absolutely fully agree with him. And the reality is that VendorLink is scalable, and it is able to respond to such regulatory changes very, very quickly. So our intention is to start with accessories and hemp-derived CBD as it is permissible under applicable state laws, and we're exploring the expansion to other verticals as the regulation evolves, and also into other adjacent complementary categories and markets. So let's expand about other markets as an example for a moment. The platform that we've built can scale both vertically and geographically. We invested quite a bit of time and capital building this platform and effectively refining it in Canada. The team that did that is now ready to take what we've built and expand it. So we recently announced our potential US expansion, but really our platform is capable of expanding anywhere in the world. And we're very, very excited for the future and seeing how quickly things are changing. Now, we mentioned both vertical and geographical expansion. So beyond geographical expansion, I spoke a little bit about adjacent complementary categories. So you might ask yourselves, what are these exactly? Well, our industry and other adjacent industries are very, very fast moving, and we're prepared for that. So time will tell exactly how things will evolve, but we can take one example, which is the psychedelic domain, which is a domain that is very interesting for us because at the end of the day, people leverage compounds such as cannabis or psychedelics such as psilocybin that recently became significantly more popular and acceptable to achieve similar goals. Some people want to achieve relief. Some people treat symptoms or conditions. People want to achieve an effect or relief for their anxiety and stress and so forth. So we as a company that already has the experience and the infrastructure needed for distribution of highly regulated products, it's not a stretch for people to think that we could enter these new markets. So we are not blind to that as well, and we're always evaluating such opportunities, and we've designed our platforms to be scalable and allow us to move to such industries if possible. Now, the vision that we've set to achieve is very ambitious, right? We covered a little bit of the why us, right? We have the team, we have the technology, and we have the infrastructure. And we've made significant investments into our platforms over the past 2 years, both from the technology perspective, but also from a facility perspective. As a simple example, our CanMart Labs facility, which is currently awaiting licensing from Health Canada, is one of really a handful of BHO extraction facilities in Canada that were built to GMP standards, has a team in place, as well as the equipment and the know-how to produce high quality extracts within the 2.0 category. But beyond all of the above, we also have a very, very strong financial position. We recently brought in new institutional investors, and we have no long-term debt in place that would come back to haunt us. So effectively, we have the infrastructure, team, and capital to scale this both vertically and geographically. And there's a question that a lot of our shareholders have been asking, which is whether we plan to do a reverse split. So I wanted to take this opportunity to clarify this and say we currently have no intention of doing that. We believe in what we're doing, and we're hopeful that the results that we will deliver will be reflected within the market. So going forward, our key strategic objectives are to drive revenue growth towards profitability, execute on the potential launch of VendorLink in the US, and leverage the platform that we've built to grow beyond the US and to grow vertically as well. Essentially, we aim to be connectors of consumers and products for cannabis and related products as well. We've built a platform that is now finally being recognized by the industry, by adjacent industries, and by professionals, and we're very, very excited for what the future holds for the company. So I hope this made sense and gave a better idea of what the company is about, and I'm looking forward to some questions that Joe will help us answer.
Thank you very much. A great presentation, really interesting story. As you mentioned, my name's Joe Gomes. I'm the Noble Analyst. We're going to start the Q&A session. And if you wish to ask a question, please click on the lower right corner of the video window. So we've got a couple here. Let me do some here from the audience first. How do you differ from some of the other cannabis vendors that claim to have similar capabilities, such as a company like Akerna?
So Akerna is a technology company that operates within the cannabis industry, but Akerna is really purely a software provider, right? And they've done a good job, and then they've been acquiring a lot of companies within the seed-to-sale ERP systems and buying and more tools that enable cannabis companies to do business. Now we differ in the way that we, as of now, don't sell software licenses. We don't sell SaaS, software as a service, to the pure extent that it is. What we sell is an end-to-end solution, meaning, and I'll clarify it with an example. If we were to be similar to Shopify, we would be very similar to companies like Dachi, for example. Dachi licenses a platform, tells you, here you go. This is your store platform. Go and build it, design it, get all the applications. Now you go and acquire the customers. You go run CRO, do payments, do everything. It's on you, essentially, the vendor. What we come and tell these players and say, you don't need to do any of that. We provide you not only with the technical infrastructure, but with the services as well. We have a fully dedicated marketing team. We have fully dedicated sales team. If you need to move your product on the B2C channel, direct to consumer online, we handle it end to end. You wish to move your products in Canada on the B2B channel, we can do that for you as well. So we have a much broader, effectively, involvement within the value chain than just an element of service within that segment.
Thanks for the insight into that. Where are you in the approval process in the U.S. and what's the time frame and likelihood for approval?
That's always a difficult question to answer as you're dependent on regulators. But I can say that we have done a lot of work in the past and we didn't go about this potential expansion lightly. We've done our due diligence. We know what was done before, what decisions were made in the past by regulators. We retained expert counsel, and we are in the process of obtaining all these approvals. Now, I truthfully wish I could provide a timeline. If it were dependent on me internally, I would be happy to commit to a timeline because I know we can hit it. But as long as we are dependent on regulators, it's very, very difficult. That being said, based on what we've done to date and what we've seen, we hope to be active in the US by the end of February. If the regulators decide that further information is needed, it might go beyond that, but it's something that we're fairly confident.
Great. How long after Health Canada license is given to CanMart Labs do you expect to be able to start selling your own products developed there?
So this is a very, very good question, and I will provide the timeline that we currently have in place, and also explain a little bit why that is. So we are looking at a timeline of around 2 to 2.5 months to be able to have a batch of products in the market that was manufactured at CanMart Labs. Now, the reason that time is relatively extensive is not because we haven't been preparing. We've been doing a lot of work and we effectively have the entire team on standby, the equipment is on standby, everything is waiting. But there are certain actions that we cannot take until we receive our license. And these actions are directly related to quality and compliance. One of our key factors, essentially values, is that our customers are very, very important for us and compliance is not optional. So we're going to run through a very rigorous process to make sure that we comply with all the regulation and requirements needed from Health Canada so that customers can be certain that the products that they're buying have met a very, very high bar of compliance and quality. If we're able to cut that timeline shorter, we will, but this is currently what we're looking for. However, one note for our investors is that we have prepared for this flow as well. And I want to speak about that a little bit, meaning we have products in market already that have been manufactured by co-manufacturers and partners, and some products that are not in market yet. But we intend to very quickly make that switch because we've already captured market share of shelf and market share, and we're effectively going to increase our gross margins once the products are manufactured by CanMart Labs. But it's not as if it's going to take time to receive the license, manufacture, and then a very lengthy sales cycle. We're already in market, and we're going to be able to respond very quickly.
So on a follow-up to that, will CanMart be open to the recreational market, and is there more regulations as opposed to the medicinal side?
So I'm going to assume what the question refers to, but we cannot sell recreational cannabis direct to consumer today from CanMart or CanMart Labs. We must go through the provincial bodies and the independent retailers. And in the case of Saskatchewan and potentially other provinces, we are able to facilitate the sale of recreational cannabis. So these are the channels that we currently have in place, and we will continue leveraging them. Now, we are looking forward to some regulatory changes that will allow us to expand that reach and potentially be able to sell recreational cannabis direct to consumer in other provinces. And we are working together with industry partners and some of the regulators to see how we can move this forward. But that is something that we currently, as per regulation, cannot do.
Thanks for that insight. Question here, you mentioned having the traffic and now we're looking for expansion. How are you generating such significant traffic needed to essentially scale up since you cannot do traditional types of advertising?
So this is a very interesting point. Indeed, there's a lot of restrictions when it comes to advertising within our sector. However, there are two things that we are able to do that not many other companies can, that allow us to grow exponentially. One is the fact that beyond cannabis, our marketplace, currently in Canada and hopefully in other jurisdictions as well, sells unregulated products as well. Unregulated products that effectively allow us to acquire customers in more traditional methods, and effectively in the moment they're on the platform, we can cross and upsell them. And we've built proprietary technology, effectively recommendation technology, search optimization, and so forth, that is personalized using machine learning, that identifies what customers are looking for and allows us to cross and upsell them once they're on the platform. So we are actually able to use traditional advertising methods, such as advertising on Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc., to acquire customers. And once they're on the platform and they're registered, we can expand that to the regulated goods for which we cannot advertise. Beyond that, we also have an advantage where we really own the entire stack, right? And I'm talking specifically about the telemedicine channel. The telemedicine channel allows us to own the entire funnel. And the way that we acquire customers on the top of the funnel in Namaste MD is less restrictive. So we're able to bring customers that are purely interested in the cannabis product through that channel and expand to that as well. So it's something that we've invested a lot of time in, and we wanted to make sure that we both remain compliant, but also have the flexibility and the dynamic ability to grow using traditional methods. So that was a really valid question, and I would be happy to share more information, but that comes a little bit into the kind of the secret sauces and competitive advantages that we have, so I'll keep it at that.
That sounds good. Is your core customer base the independent smaller shops, or will you be working with the MSOs?
That's I am very interested in working with the MSOs. Of course, we're always in discussions with companies and potential partners. There needs to be a specific profile of MSOs, because we don't want to sign partnerships that are simply for the sake of signing a partnership. I always believe in the formula of if it's 1 + 1 = 3, meaning if we join forces, are we able to move much faster and more efficiently together? If that's the case, it's a natural win-win, and we should do that. So there's a specific profile of MSOs and generally partners that we believe we can work well together, and we're in the process of discussing and kind of hashing those out. But the potential is definitely beyond only the smaller players.
For VendorLink, is there a screening process to ensure that companies that utilize VendorLink for cannabis, CBD, other types of products, to ensure their effective health standards and quality of the product?
Absolutely, 100%. And it's very broad. I can spend an hour talking only about that. But effectively, every vendor that joins the platform needs to go through a vendor qualification process. we have a QA agreement that is signed with each one. We have audit rights effectively that allow us to make sure that things are done as per the agreements. Furthermore, as we start rolling the platform out, onboarding is done manually. We're very, very careful with whom we bring on board. In fact, we have a team that writes the product descriptions ourselves. We don't leave it to the vendors yet. The platform has been built to enable completely automatic and autonomous onboarding. So once we refine the processes, a vendor could come, sign in, register, upload their product, and we'll have a very automatic process of onboarding and validating, etc. But as we start, we're very selective with who we add to the platform and how we control that, exactly for the reason that you just mentioned.
Now, this next question, I think you really touched on in the presentation, and I think you get to the point where the cart is before the horse. But are you looking to expand to other countries beside the U.S.?
Yes, we are definitely looking to expand to other countries beside the U.S. I mean, in the same way that this is a question that always came up, and I'll use the U.S. example. I'm a firm believer in hard work, laying a plan, validating that plan, and having B and C plans, and waiting for the right moment to be prepared. And there were questions that were asking in regards to when is the U.S. expansion happening? And we said we need to see how the regulation evolves and how things change, but we have a plan and we're ready to expand the moment that the time is right. And thankfully, things are looking very, very promising in the U.S. And we pulled the trigger on that plan. We have a clear playbook in regards to how we want to expand to other geographies. There are elements such as, how does the regulatory landscape look like? Well, what's the total addressable market? How similar is that market to what we know? Do we operate in that market? Is our offering suitable to succeed in that market? We have a long list of criteria that we review. And if that geography meets that criteria, and it's not only geography, by the way, it's verticals as well, then we start building plans. And we build those plans and we prepare. And of course, before we actually launch, we review and see if there are any adjustments that need to be made. And even after we do launch, we're very lean. We have that build, measure, learn loop where we do something that is relatively lean. We want to see value. We learn from that. We adjust if needed. And we do that until we achieve effectively what we believe is product market fit. So it was a little bit of a long answer, but I wanted to expand on the yes and show how we think about expansion. We're very cautious. We don't just throw a dart in the map and say, boom, let's just spend money there and go crazy. We're very meticulous and calculated in the way that we expand because we want to be efficient and effective in our deployment of capital and resources.
How many vendors does Namaste currently have that are using VendorLink?
So referring to the US, we currently have 2 vendors that we onboarded as we're only starting the process. In Canada, we have a larger number, and to be completely frank, I don't know what that number is off of the top of my head, but I can say that it's not a massive number yet, exactly because of the reason that I mentioned earlier. We could open the tap and say, go crazy, join the platform, but we want to make sure that there is quality. We want to make sure that there is no analysis paralysis and there is no volume of products on the platform that don't really make sense and that the quality is there. We want to monitor these vendors. So we're starting relatively slowly, but we've seen massive interest. We have a very, very long wait list, effectively, of vendors that want to join, particularly in Canada, as we started a little bit earlier. And we're slowly validating those and weeding out the ones that don't fit right now and expanding the offering there.
Great answer there. A couple more here in the little bit of time we have remaining. Any update on the labs license? How long until that venture can be up and running once the license is granted? And what type of short-term effect would that have on the bottom line?
So the middle question in regards to how long it'll take from licensing, we covered earlier. In regards to when we can expect the license, we are truly at the mercy of Health Canada, and they have their processes that they need to go through, and we do respect that. They're very overloaded, and they need to make sure that people that do come online meet their criteria. We've effectively provided all the information requested of us to Health Canada. So we're hoping that is something that can happen in the very near future. And the effect that this will have on the bottom line near term, we would need to quantify, but I know what our targets are. We intend to increase gross profit significantly. We've set some very aggressive gross profit targets for the coming year. And effectively, our ability to manufacture 2.0 products within our own facility is a key contributor to those gross profit targets. So we don't want to operate in the very narrow margin realm. We are looking into effectively leveraging our position and having some very, very healthy margin that work in conjunction with our revenue growth that we've demonstrated and hope to continue to demonstrate, and together allow us to reach that point of profitability.
One last one here. So you recently raised $23 million. How long do you think that can last? And what are the three main things that money you raised will be used for?
So we raised that capital because we wanted to make sure that now that we've built that platform, now that we have the team, the technology, the infrastructure, the positioning, and we're ready to scale, we can scale. Right? We wanted to choose the right investors, the right partners to complement our existing investor base and work together to give us that ability to invest in growth. So how long it will last? We have our internal plans, but it's enough to give us breathing room for not have to go back to the market or worry about capital for a sufficient amount of time. What we're going to use that capital for is really focused on expansion. Right? That's the promise that we gave to our investors. That's a promise that we had internally. And I've said this before and in other forums that the last 2 years for us have been very internally focused. We were really reorganizing, cleaning up, and laying foundations. We've really shifted, particularly in the beginning of this year, to be outward looking and being much more focused on expansion. That is going to be the key objective for which this capital is used. Expansion is not cheap, right? We intend to be efficient with our capital deployment, but to be able to move to countries such as the US, potentially other countries, and expanding to other verticals as well is costly. And now we have that capital to allow us to do that. And thankfully, as I noted, we are in a position to be very, very efficient with that capital deployment. So we have reason to believe that this will last us quite a bit of time.
Well, that's all the time we have today. I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to present at NobleCon17. Really interesting story here. We really look forward to seeing how it unfolds over the coming months and years. And again, just want to thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, and have a great day.